Hello friends, I am Dr. Suchitra Gupta and I teach English in Government VYT PG Autonomous College Durg. The topic of my today's lecture is Orientalism by Edward Said. In this lecture of mine today, I will be discussing firstly major influences on Said in the writing of the treatise Orientalism, then chapter-wise summary of Orientalism, and third, critics' reviews on the treatise Orientalism. Many scholars place the beginning of post-colonial studies with the publication of Edward Said's magnum opus Orientalism in the year 1978. So this beginning of post-colonial studies in all the eras of arts, literature, philosophy, anthropology, sociology. So with this onset came with the publication of Said's Orientalism in the year 1978. Said here focuses his attention on the interplay between Occident and the Orient. Occident is his term for the West, represented by England, France and the US, and the Orient is his term for the romanticized and misunderstood Far East and Middle East. In 1970, Said went to visit his family in Beirut, and while there he got caught up in the Palestinian struggle for freedom. So during this period he came in contact with various writers and academicians who had been involved in the colonial and post-colonial struggles. It was during this period that he translated the speeches of Yasser Arafat into English for the Western press. He became an articulate voice for Palestinian struggle in the US and Europe. Having published Orientalism in 1978, the next 3 years saw a trilogy being formed with the publication of The Question of Palestine in 1979 and Covering Islam in 1981. Before explaining Said's Orientalism, it is very imperative on our part to know the major influences on Said in the global context. The very concept of beginning and origins is derived from Vico, and he was also influenced by Vico's concept of filiation and affiliation. Origin, Vico considered, was divine, and the beginning was human. Similarly, filiation is instinctive, whereas affiliation is social. Said, the next influence on Said is that of Foucault. Foucault's concept of knowledge and power, correlation between knowledge and power. He asserts that without explaining Orientalism as a discourse, one cannot understand the systematic way by which European culture was able to produce the Orient. Said was also influenced by Gramsci's concept of hegemony, which is the exercise of power through the consent of the ruled by incorporating and transforming their ideologies. Right. Now we come to the text Orientalism. What is Orientalism? Simply put, Orientalism is the study of the Orient by the Occident. Now, these two terms, the Orient and the Occident, are of Latin origin. Orient comes from Latin oriens and Occident comes from the Latin occidens, which means the West. So oriens is East, Occident is West. So Orientalism is the study of the East by the West. And the one who conducts this study, who researches the Orient, is an Orientalist, and the work done by an Orientalist is Orientalism. In the 19th century, Oriental studies was an area of academic study. Said asserts that the West created the East for this study to happen. He further says that the West has created a dichotomy between the reality of the East and the romanticized notions of the Orient. The Middle East and Asia are viewed with prejudice and racism. They are projected as illiterate, ignorant, and unaware of their own culture and history. To fill the void, the West creates a culture, a history, and a promising future for them. Creates. It is not there, it creates. On this framework rests not only the concept of Oriental studies, but also political imperialism of the West. To say, Orientalism is more an indicator of the power the West holds over the Orient than about the Orient itself. By taking control of scholarship, the West also took political and economic control. The treatise Orientalism is divided into 3 chapters. The first chapter is titled The Scope of Orientalism. In this section, Said outlines his arguments with several caveats as to how it may be flawed. He says it fails to include German and Russian Orientalism because, which he suggests, has clean pasts and could be promising future studies. He also suggests that not all academic studies in Europe are Orientalist in intent. And he also says that it is not unnatural for any culture to have an exotic view of the other culture. But when this view is taken by a militarily and economically dominant culture, then it can have hazardous results. In this chapter, Said draws on written and historical commentary by many notable Western figures such as Chaucer, Shakespeare, and many others who have portrayed Orient as inferior and other inverted commas, different from us, we and they. The second chapter, titled Orientalist Structures and Restructures. In this chapter, Said outlines how Orientalist discourses were transferred from country to country and from political leader to author. He cites examples of many authors and scholars like Edward William Lane, who spent barely 2 or 3 years in Egypt and came out with a full-fledged book on Egyptians titled Manners and Customs of Modern Egyptians. This book was widely circulated and read as truth throughout Europe. The travelers and academics of the East depended on this discourse for their own education, and so the Orientalist discourse of the West over the East was passed on. Right? So what they created, people took it as truth, and they did not depend on they did not really, in fact, go after the reality behind. Third chapter of Orientalism is titled Orientalism Now. This chapter outlines where Orientalism has gone since the historical framework outlined in previous chapters. This book was written in 1978, so only covers historical events up till then. Says that the discovery of oil in Arabian Peninsula and the shift in regional power interests from England and France to United States were important events that shaped and reshaped Orientalist ideas. He further says that the notion of the Orient were retranslated by the people from the region itself who had gone to West to study. For example, a Saudi student coming from the US after his studies, he might return with a retranslated notion about himself. In this chapter, he also makes his statements on cultural discourse as to how does one represent one's culture, what is another culture, is the concept of distinct culture a useful one, or it ends merely in self-congratulation or hostility and aggression. So this was, in brief, the chapter-wise summary of Orientalism. So this book, Orientalism, makes three major claims. Number one, Orientalism, though purporting to be an objective and disinterested study, in fact functioned to serve political ends. Europe by taking scholarship under its control, took over politically took over the Oriental lands. Second, Orientalism helped define Europe's self-image. It gave Europe a sense of its own intellectual and cultural superiority. It was assumed that the West is rational, superior, humane, and developed, whereas Orient is aberrant, underdeveloped, and inferior. And the third claim that this treatise makes is that Orientalism has produced a false description of Arabs and Islamic culture. This happened because of the essentialistic nature of the treatise, that is, the belief that it was possible to define the essentialist qualities of the Arab people and Islamic culture. Said presents his work not only as an examination of the European attitude towards the Arabs and the Islamic culture, but also as a model of all the European discourses on the other, the Orient. Said He is not against the West. He rather wants to do away with the binary opposition between the East and the West. He pleads for the extinction of both Orientalism and Occidentalism so that one cannot claim superiority over the other. Now we come to the third segment, that is the critical analysis of this treatise, Orientalism. Now this highly influential critique had sparkled notable controversy in the academic community. It is argued that Orientalists were overwhelmingly supportive to Islam and helpful to its causes. Moreover, Said's contention that the West had dominated East for 2000 years is unsupportable because until late 17th century, Ottoman Empire had posed a serious threat to Europe. Further, Said claimed that the British Empire extended from Egypt to India in 1880s, when in fact Ottoman and Persian Empire intervened. Even at the height of European imperialism, the European power was never absolute. It highly depended on local collaborators. The areas of Middle East on which Said concentrated, including Palestine and Egypt, are poor examples of his theory, as they came under European control only late in the 19th century and early in the 20th century for a very short period. Said, in fact, gave much less attention to more apt examples such as British Raj in India and Russian dominance in Asia. It is argued that this was done by Said intentionally because he wanted to make political issue of Middle East. He failed to acknowledge, it is argued, many Orientals like Sir William Jones, who was more concerned with establishing kinship between the East and the West. Moreover, he makes no differentiation between authors who were sympathetic towards Orientalists, who were in fact not Orientalist in their intent, and who had really worked on first-hand knowledge. Also, Said very conveniently ignored the fact that the Oriental studies in the 19th century were dominated by Germany and Hungary. These two nations, these countries, they did not possess any Eastern empire. Anyhow, Edward Said's Orientalism has heralded an interdisciplinary movement called post-colonial theory by exposing West through his famous term and theory known as Orientalism. Thank you.